everyone, I'm Alex and I'm the hands behind Lovecraft Crochet. My plushies are for the anxious, depressed, autistic, and neurodivergent. Small enough to travel in a purse, backpack, diaper bag, or even your pocket. You can check out my Facebook page or TikTok to see what patterns are available and stay tuned for the new ones coming out. I also make hats, scarves, blankets, and dice bags for the tabletop gamer or dice goblin in your life. Feel free to order through the page, TikTok DMs, or via email at love.craft.crochet@gmail.com. Now, on to the segment.
Due to the graphic and disturbing nature of the crimes discussed, listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Killing 15 Minutes, where we examine crimes that left scars, not just on the victims, but on the culture that consumed them. I'm Sam Rossi, reading a script poignantly written by A.J. Carey, who followed the original case as it unfolded. Tonight's case is one you may think you recognize, because years after the violence ended, it was transformed, rewritten, stylized, and sold back to the public as entertainment. But before it was a franchise, before it was costumes and box office numbers, it was a real series of murders. These are the crimes that inspired the Robert Rodriguez Stab films, and even the murders at the premiere of Stab. But we will get there. On the evening of September 24th, 1996, emergency services received a call from a suburban home on the outskirts of the quaint little town of Woodsboro, California. By the time police arrived, Casey Becker, a high school student, was dead. She had been stabbed repeatedly. Her parents found her at what coroners would later describe as mere minutes after her murder, hanging from a tree in their front yard. Investigators determined that the attack was preceded by a series of phone calls. According to Gail Weathers' books, The Woodsboro Murder, and corroborated by the murder's M.O. later on, the call began playful and even charming, before the tone shifted quickly. What followed was psychological torture, leading to the death of Casey's boyfriend, Stephen Orth, found bound to a chair facing the sliding back door, gutted, before Casey herself would be chased throughout the house and then murdered. The extreme violence and theatrical nature of the phone calls, and the murders, showed this was no spontaneous attack. It was premeditated and rehearsed. Within days of the murder, the principal of the high school, Arthur Himbry, was stabbed 4 times, and his body was also strung up, this time on the football field. This would prove to be a major factor in the next wave of killings, as gawkers flooded from a private party to see the spectacle. That party at 261 Turner Lane, the home of student Stu Mocker, would be the culmination of the violence. The large house party was attended by dozens of students. Alcohol, noise, chaos, a perfect place for a killer to go unnoticed. And there would be multiple victims inside this home, even while guests were still around. Tatum Riley was assaulted in the garage, with her head being crushed by a garage door as she attempted to escape her killer. The final victim of this massacre was Kenneth Brown, cameraman to Gail Weathers, who had his throat slit outside of his news van as the killer was hunting for Sidney Prescott. Now, in fact, is probably the best time to talk about Sidney Prescott. Sidney Prescott became a target early after Casey Becker was murdered. She had received intimidating phone calls and survived multiple attacks from the killer. 1 year earlier, her mother, Maureen Prescott, had been violently murdered. While police arrested Cotton Weary for the crime, he was acquitted in 1996, right before the Woodsboro massacre happened. After the murders and the attacks at the house party, police would finally be able to identify the killers. There were in fact 2. Both were known to the victims and both had been present, with one being a key suspect in the early stages of the investigation. They were Billy Loomis, who was dating Sidney Prescott at the time, and Stu Mocker, who was the ex-boyfriend of Casey Becker. Both men were classmates and friends to the majority of the victims. Their motives were layered with resentment, jealousy, and obsession, although these specific killers at their core was rooted in a fixation on Maureen Prescott. Maureen Prescott would also having an affair with Hank Loomis, Billy's father. When that came to light, Hank's wife left, and the abandonment issues and a neglectful, possibly abusive father led Billy to snap. Stu, however, seemed to stem more from a desire for notoriety and a love of horror media. Regardless of their reason, they murdered 6 people before they intended to enact their plan. They were going to kill Sydney, frame her father, and then disappear into the aftermath as survivors. This plan unraveled when stabbing each other didn't work out as planned. Yes, the geniuses decided to stab each other and then try their best not to hit anything vital. Although this did allow time for both killers to be killed by Sydney in self-defense. In the aftermath, the town would become abuzz with people wanting to see the spectacle of the area. A true crimes book was published by Gail Weathers, detailing the case that she called the Woodsboro murder, although this book would be criticized for being heavily sensationalized. The book, though, was quickly adapted into a movie, and then another, and another. The violence was stylized, the killers were characterized, the victims became characters played by Tori Spelling. The Stab films turned real trauma into a franchise. For survivors, it meant the worst nights were replayed endlessly for entertainment, and they did become harassed over it. The Woodsboro murder didn't end with killers dead. They lived on, rebranded, resold, rewritten, until the line between reality and spectacle blurred. So much so that at the premiere of the first Stab movie, Phil Stevens and Maureen Evans were killed by a copycat killer, who would then go on to terrorize Windsor College. And yes, Sidney Prescott would be back as a target for that sequel. This case is a reminder that true crime doesn't end at a verdict. Sometimes it just changes format. This has been Killing 15 Minutes. I'm Sam Rossi. Good night and God bless.
Now may I talk?
No.
Okay.
Keep on carrying on.
C-A-R-E-Y. Because
Carry On Productions.